A very warm welcome into the huddle this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. At the top, firstly, an apology. We the team was very full of sick and flu last week. I'm going to call it the bye week. We were doubtful to play on the weekend, and we didn't make it. So apologies for that. Every team needs a rest. We are no exception to that. But we are back this week. We missed some chaos, I think it's fair to say, in week 13. But we're back to reflect on all of that and look ahead to everything coming in week 14. I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving. Thank you very much for everyone who's been getting involved. We've still been posting over on social media. We've hit a few milestones of number of followers, etc., over on YouTube, TikTok. We're closing in on 1,000 on X or Twitter, whatever you wish to call it. We really like to get there by Christmas. So if you are listening to this and aren't over on Twitter, sign up. Trust me, it's not as bad as they say. No, actually, it is. It is at times. But if you stay in the right circles, stay in the huddle, stay within us. It's all good fun and friendly over there. Just don't go venturing elsewhere. We also had a video over on our YouTube, which was Jake's stat from 2 weeks ago about the first ever lifetime ban in the NFL. I think that's 100 years this week after this recording, but that is our most viewed short video ever over on YouTube, with the exception of when we had Austin Eckler on the podcast. So that one blew up. Did not expect that, but Jake, tip of the hat to you for your stats on that one. People loved it. Obviously, as I've just alluded to, Jake is joining me once more for the podcast this week, with the exception of your brilliant statistic. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's, you know what? It's probably not the only thing in life I can't compete with Austin Eckler over. So I'll take the L on that one.
Second place to Austin Eckler is not bad. I mean, there are worse places in life you can be. Just before we get into all of the reflections of last week's, as I always do at the top, please remember to go visit the HuddleUK website. We've still got stories going up every day. We had some good reflections to the Jets win over the Falcons, which shout out to Dan Till, our Jets writer, for predicting the score absolutely perfectly in that one, 27-24. It is unbelievable. And he says at the bottom, sort of a modest brag, in that he's been trying to predict it every week. If you get one right a season, you've done well. An exact score is very, very difficult to do.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, tip of the hat to Dan on that one. Very, very well played. So we do know what we're talking about over at HuddleUK. And a quick apology as well, that we have had some issues with the website in this last week or so, acting a bit slower. So if you have had any issues, please get in touch and we will try our very best to fix that. If you are struggling to find any of the content, remember, go watch all the videos and that on YouTube as well. That's enough of the plug-in. It's time to get into it. And let's start with last week's games, because I feel like we've banged this drum a bit too much, Jake, but we can't help it, because every single week we go, here we are. I remember 2 weeks ago saying it's very clear now that the best teams in the NFL are the Rams and the Eagles. Hilarious. 2 weeks later, I know we were off last week, but 2 weeks go by and that looks like absolute nonsense. Now, I'm not saying that these are two bad teams, the Rams and the Eagles, but 2 weeks ago, they were the clear number one. And now the Panthers went and beat the Rams. The Eagles lost to the Bears. And I don't know which way's up anymore. So what game from last week should we start with? Because there were so many topsy-turvy ones. Let's go back. This is a while back, but let's go back to Thanksgiving, because all three favourites lost on Thanksgiving. The Lions lost to the Packers, the Chiefs lost to the Cowboys, and the Ravens lost to the Bengals. And if ever a day summed up the sport of NFL, eating turkey legs, celebrating the American dream, but also who knows what the hell's going to happen on the field, that summed it up beautifully.
Yeah, I think like the Cowboys was the one game, I think, that they're an improving team, right? So, and they always turn up on the Thursday. Admittedly, normally so do Detroit, compared to how their normal records go, at least. But that didn't happen. I also didn't expect Jordan Love to absolutely torch them. And I think the thing which, particularly for the Packers, which makes them so infuriating, is the fact that offense has such a high ceiling. We've just seen it, to go to Ford Field and do that to, a relatively handy Detroit defense. They've had some issues, some injuries still, but we've seen the heights of it. But for a fact that this same Packers team in the next fortnight are probably going to give you one of the worst offensive performances you've seen from a team in green. A team in green and yellow, should we say. And I think that's the most infuriating thing, probably sums up the NFL this season.
they've been so up and down, the Packers. So I know Nathan, our Packers writer for HuddleUK, has talked about it numerous times on the website about how it's a very much a roller coaster season. 1 week, Jordan Love and the team, everything clicks, it all looks great, and then the next week it's rubbish. So he puts a lot of that on Matt LaFleur's shoulders. I think I think the blame goes around to more than just Matt LaFleur. But yeah, Packers beating the Lions. Cowboys, as you say, are one of, if not the most ascending team in the league right now, which is hard to believe given how it started. And we all like to laugh at Jerry Jones, yes, because, well, rightly so. But, and I'm still not saying trading away Micah Parsons was the right idea, far, far from it.
I know
But
what's coming.
they've looked better than I think most people expected them to. And Tony Romo, obviously he has his bias, which is, of course, but in the broadcast for this game was talking about who the Cowboys have left to play. And he was kind of saying, well, I think they can win out, which, that's bold. But when you look at who they have to play, they've got the Giants, the Commanders, and the Vikings, who you would expect them to win those games. They have the Lions. Now, this is Thursday Night Football. This podcast will come up after that, and we were recording before, so we don't know what's happened on Thursday Night Football. But if they've won that game against the Lions on Thursday, the hardest team on paper they have left to play is the Chargers. And I'm not saying that because the Chargers are great, and they're my team, but that is the hardest of their final 4 games. So it is very plausible. Again, it'll be funny if they've lost this game now on Thursday, which is it's very possible against the Lions. But
Entirely.
you wouldn't want to face the Cowboys in the playoffs or otherwise right now.
No, and I think there's something. So firstly, Jerry's had a lot of flack mid-season for the trades. The Micah Parsons trade away, then trading for Quinn and Williams, which when you combine the two together, you realise that if it was just one trade, it wouldn't look all that great. I think we do have to give him his flowers, bless him, for George Pickens.
Yeah, 100%.
What a trade. Because I think there's some sort of, yes, you see that George Pickens was slightly uncontrollable at times in Pittsburgh and slightly volatile. And I think people looked at the Antonio Brown situation, that as soon as Antonio Brown left the orbit of Mike Tomlin, he seemed to kind of go off the rails in his own way, freezing his feet in Las Vegas and things like that. That was the tip of the iceberg. But then George Pickens, I think people painted in the same way. And then Dallas go and get him for a 3rd and a 5th. And I know they've got to pay him, and it's almost definitely going to be a franchise tag situation. And we'll see how he reacts to being signed to the franchise tag. But a 3rd and a 5th for this season alone is an absolute steal. Bearing in mind, what did they give up for Jonathan Mingo a year ago? Was it also a 3rd?
I think it was a 3rd, yeah.
It's also a 3rd. So are we saying that there's a 5th round pick between Mingo and George Pickens? Is that what there's something in that Jerry can't possibly value both of those players the same?
Jonathan Mingo was just your athletic guy, wasn't he? He was kind of just like the measurements look good, but on the field it doesn't translate. So yeah, and we talked about it quite a lot at HuddleUK over on the website when Pickens went. A sort of was this the right move? Because as you touched upon there, often when the Steelers get rid of wide receivers, it's a very good move. They tend to move on to guys at the right time, whether that be Brown or Claypool or whoever it is. It seems to be the right decision. And I know that Paul, the Cowboys writer, was like, oh God, is this the right move? What do we not know here? But it's turned into an absolute blockbuster trade. And as you say, Jerry Jones, for all the criticisms that he gets, and understandably, this has been an absolute steal, one of the steals of recent memory. So, I wouldn't want to be playing the Cowboys right now. They're obviously outside the playoff picture because of the way they started. If they lose, if they have lost against the Lions, by the time this comes out, they'll have a fewer than 10% chance of making the playoffs. But if they've won, it's up to 40%. So massive, massive swing game for the Cowboys and the Lions, who we'll touch on them briefly, because if they win, it gets to over 50%. But if they lose, their playoff chance goes down to 20%. And I'm not comparing them to the Packers, and God forbid I'll say those two teams are the same, because I'm not going to generate that hate from NFC North fans.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, on their day, look like they can beat anyone mantra, they
Yeah.
fall into that same category, but also they almost lost to the Giants a few weeks ago. And Jameis Winston had one of the best games he's had in recent memory. But this isn't a team that gel and click week in, week out. And it's not a surprise to me right now that they're currently outside the playoff picture.
I think that with injuries for the Lions, both this season and last season, obviously, it was followed quite a lot how many players Aaron Glenn was missing on that defense. I think when you look at it, Frank Ragnow trying to come out of retirement for this team and them welcoming him into the building speaks volumes about the continuity that losing your star center has on an O-line that is so dependent on the run. The fact that that was even something that they almost welcomed, they were willing to put him through. If you're in a good place, you're probably turning around and going, no thanks, but no thanks. You look at Philly for all the offensive line issues that they've had. At no point have they turned around and said, okay, Cam Jurgens is good, but we kind of want to get Jason Kelce back off of the podcast kind of sofa. So I think, when you look at, it's not all perfect and rosy in Detroit. We had noticed that Kirby Joseph intends to come back this season. I'd completely not even realized that Kirby Joseph wasn't even playing. The guy that basically caught every interception, it felt, last season, or the season before that, actually, before he got injured. So you realize that actually they are missing some of their kind of star players still. So they are disjointed. I think what you find with a run game is when a run game is on, there's nothing the opponent can do. It is physical, man versus man. Yes, there's scheme dependent in there as well, but it is a physical dominance of the opponent. Whereas with a strong passing game, there is a lot more volatility, a lot more randomness that can happen. So you do tend to see the fact that, I think we can comfortably say that the Bengals winning on Thanksgiving as well, by so much, is because of the potency of their passing game. So I think you get a little bit more discontinuity with a team like Detroit, where when they're on, when they're not, they open themselves up to be kind of dragged back into it by the likes of the New York Giants. So
moving on from the Cowboys, because there were some other crazy games last week. I think the one we have to talk about, I alluded to it briefly, and it's the Panthers against the Rams, because I've said numerous times on this podcast that I think the Panthers are a good team. I've been one of their big backers. Not the best team, but I think they're better than people give them credit for. And this was just a wacky game, because going into it, everyone was talking about how Stafford hadn't thrown an interception since week 3 or whatever it was. And then in the first half, he threw 2, had a fumble, which led to the Panthers winning the game. And the Matthew Stafford hype suddenly disappeared very quickly. And Bryce Young, he does have his games where he is, well, beyond bad. But in this game, he threw 2 fourth-down touchdowns and a laser to seal the game as well. So he had a brilliant, brilliant game. And it just goes to say what we were saying before of, in that NFC, is there any team right now that would feel confident in themselves going to the Super Bowl?
In themselves, I think probably the Rams will. I think the Rams will brush off what's happened against the Panthers. I think they know that they actually played well enough to win, but unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. That they looked better on the field. They just made more mistakes than Carolina. Carolina punched them in the mouth. And the way the game script then just changed every single time they managed to make one of these errors. And it just really got away from them. But I mean, they were never truly out of it. So I think that if I'm going to sit down, the Rams will learn obviously from that. I'm not any lower on them as a team. I think that you have games like this over the course of the season. There's not many games where the Carolina Panthers will come out of it with 0 turnovers, to be perfectly frank. So that in itself was amazing. But hats off to them. They took their opportunities, and that there were some unbelievable catches in that game, whether it's Puka Nacua, interceptions, all sorts. I mean, we could probably spend an entire podcast talking about some of the catches that we saw in week 13.
Well, you read my mind, because that's exactly where I was going next, because that Puka Nacua catch is outstanding. And on any week of the season, most seasons, that would be the clear-cut number one catch
100%.
without any doubt. And this week, well, I think for me, there's two others that come into the conversation. I think the
Okay.
Brock Bowers touchdown against the Chargers has to be in it, because I think you messaged me in that both broadcasters said live they've dropped it. They said,
Yeah.
oh, it's incomplete.
Incomplete.
And in both instances, it was caught. That
Yeah.
Bowers touchdown, he is so good, isn't he?
I think that when you look at, when we talked about MVP already, I think it's really interesting how you can have such a good player on such a bad team, and you can look at it and go, how bad would the Raiders be without Brock Bowers? Because for the last, certainly 2 weeks at least, he seems to just be hoovering everything up, moving them downfield. It was actually the case all last season, which is why he broke the records that he did. I mean, he's just unbelievable. It makes you wonder whether or not, if they could either put it together properly or if he was on a legitimately good team, I'm sure he'd probably look less impressive, but it would be amazing, wouldn't it? Just to see him, if, if you could do a little swap for him for Travis Kelce or something like that, and you go, right, here you go. I know Raiders fans will hate the idea of that, but, the idea of Brock Bowers and Patrick Mahomes for the next 10 years is, terrifying, right? So, yeah, he that was just ridiculous. The fact that personally for me was the better catch of the night. I know obviously the Traylon Burks one was
Yeah, that's
impressive
my
as well.
third one. Who saw that coming? We had a bet that won this week. Won a few £100. Was delighted. If you had money on a Traylon Burks touchdown, particularly in that manner, what a catch that is! It's unbelievable. And I really wanted to tweet and take the mick, but it was Mariota to Burks. It was like two former Titans combined in, and it's the first time since the draft that anyone has gone Traylon Burks looks like AJ Brown, because he did that catch. It was an unbelievable catch. But yeah, I mean, he's not done anything even vaguely resembling that in his entire career to date. Hey, well done to him. What a grab.
Do you think ex-Titans GM John Robinson is sat somewhere just doing the Leo meme, pointing at the screen, being like, "See, I knew he had it in him." Just a few years too late for me, unfortunately. I don't know. I mean, he's always been a talented player. It's nice that he scored a touchdown that doesn't rely on him picking up a fumble from a Derrick Henry run. That's good. He I gotta say, are they his only 2 touchdowns that he's ever scored in his career?
I think we may be giving him a slight disservice, and he may have more than that.
Has he got more than that?
If he does, it's not by a lot. Nope, you're spot on. He's got 2.
He's got 2 of the greatest, most memorable touchdowns, I would say.
I would say that no player in NFL history who only has 2 touchdowns to their name has 2 more contrasting touchdowns.
Yeah.
Because as Jake alluded to, if you've not seen it, Traylon Burks' first ever touchdown in the NFL was a 70-yard run from Derrick Henry back at the Titans, a brilliant run. And then he fumbled it over the goal line, and Traylon Burks, heads up play, he was there.
Yeah.
He followed Henry the whole way and just picked up the loose ball for a touchdown. And then this 4 years later, it is 4 years later, I believe. That was in 2022. So 4 seasons later, gets his second touchdown in unbelievable fashion. So he had 4 targets in the game, only caught that one for 5 yards and a score. Fair play to him. I wasn't going to mention that game because I as a Chargers fan, I'm still slightly miffed that the Commanders didn't score that 2-point conversion at the end. But those are the best catches: Burks, Bowers, and Puka Nacua. The way you're talking about Bowers at the Raiders kind of reminds me of Trey McBride at the Cardinals. I just kind of wish, for the purposes of entertaining football, both of those players were on better teams. But we can all dream. Not much more I want to recap from last week. I do want to have a quick moment for Charlie. I think it's Smith. I'm assuming it's Smith, but
Smith.
Smith with a Y, who's the kicker for the New Orleans Saints this week, who, touch wood, is going to be on the podcast next week. I've been in touch with the Saints about potentially speaking to Charlie. We've been told that there's a possibility of speaking to him next week. So stay tuned, hopefully, for that. If you're a Saints fan, that would be a great bit of insight to speak to Charlie. But nailed his first field goal for over 50 yards in the NFL, and then a successful onside kick as well, which there haven't been many of at all this season. 56 yards it was, the first one, his first ever field goal. That's a bit of pressure. because he was sat on the sideline knowing that the team needed two-point conversions. And he was thinking to himself, oh, I'm never going to get on here. But he did, and he did his job perfectly. So, well done to Charlie. Hopefully, we will speak to him next week. I think that's about it for last week. Obviously, Jets, unbelievable comeback. The Buccaneers scraped past the Cardinals. Actually, that's the one thing. I knew there was one thing on my agenda before I wanted to move on. Just how bad are the Vikings?
I was waiting for that.
And this isn't to rub salt in the wounds of our good friend Bo, who's been on the podcast and all the jokes we were making in our WhatsApp groups and NFL leagues. But, you sit JJ McCarthy, and your theory is that Kevin O'Connell sat him to say, look, it could be worse. Look, this is Max. I'm going Brosma. I'm not quite sure how we're saying it, but I mean, the kid just looked so out of his depth. The first the first interception for pick 6, which is hilarious. I was just like, I've missed Will Levis doing stupid stuff every week.
Yeah.
And this was peak Will Levis. So, I'm pleased he did that. But just overall, I mean, the Vikings were so bad, weren't they? This is a team that is quickly fading to oblivion. And the genuine question and worry is, where do they go from here? Because is there a future for JJ McCarthy? You might have one of the quickest and worst careers in NFL history for a quarterback, particularly one who was drafted in the first round.
I think JJ is ultimately playing out his rookie deal in Minnesota. He's unfortunate that he lost his first season. His second season's been more miss than hit, I suppose, if you were to call it hit and miss. But he's got another 2 seasons. I think the decision will come next off season. So year 3 is going to be a really big season for him. He's obviously going to have, I would say, stronger competition than he's had coming into this season. Last season, he was obviously able to sit there. Sam Darnold had a kind of great season. The idea of keeping Darnold around was probably too much in terms of competition for McCarthy. And the whole reason why the Vikings took this approach, right, was so that they could have that window with the likes of Justin Jefferson and the defense being paid. You get a rookie quarterback on their cheaper deal. So when you look at the fact that year 3 is going to be a pivotal kind of season, because you're going to need to decide what to do with his 5th-year option, and it's almost definitely at this point going to be declined, much like what we saw with Jordan Love. It doesn't mean that's it. It just means you're probably going to end up at best signing them to a deal that maybe is slightly higher than the 5th-year option, but gives you the option to work out whether or not you've actually got a franchise quarterback. He's incredibly young, so he's got that on his side. He doesn't need to rush into that. And I do think that what a lot of teams have lost sight of is how long it takes for particularly young, particularly quarterbacks who've played a particular system in college. When you come into the NFL and you play a completely different system, that takes time. And if you go back in time, 10, 15, 20 years, some of these quarterbacks that went to the Hall of Fame, they didn't start for a long time. And when they did start, it was a nightmare. You look at the likes of Steve Young, spent most of the late 80s and early 90s running for his life because, and he'll be completely honest that, the system he was in and the situation he was in was not ideal. And that changed once he was in San Francisco, but was obviously behind Joe Montana for a bit. So there's loads of different examples of quarterbacks who take their time. Sam Darnold played the other side of this game, was previously in the bullpen for this Minnesota Vikings team. He is probably an example of a quarterback who played one particular system in college, came into the NFL really young, really raw, way out of his depth in the New York media kind of circles. And look at him now. Admittedly, Phil, have you seen his stat line from this game? Because it's also ugly.
Yeah, but that's a tip to the Vikings defense, who is that's a very good unit. But yeah, Donald didn't have a good game himself because it's the one week on this podcast where we can't wax lyrical about Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Precisely. If I was to say that one of these quarterbacks had a really bad day and they completed 14 of 26 for 128 yards, got sacked 4 times, lost 1 fumble, fumbled again but kept it, you go, well, Max Brosnan had a terrible day. And you go, no, that's the that's the guy that Minnesota decided not to sign. You can kind of see why, but yeah, he didn't need to have a big day, and unfortunately, Max had a really bad day.
The stat that is funny from the Vikings for the last 2 weeks is Max Brosmer, his QBR on last week was 32.8, and the weekend before, JJ McCarthy's QBR was 34.2. If you spike the ball into the ground on every play, your QBR is 39.6. So if you literally just throw it at your feet every play, you would have a better QBR than what these two quarterbacks have had the last 2 weeks. So that speaks volumes to how the Vikings have done. It has been pretty brutal. They are the sort of team, if you're in the fantasy playoffs of your league, look at the teams that the Vikings are going to be playing, because they're the defenses that you're going to want to be starting. Moving on to week 14, we've mentioned the Lions-Cowboys games. Obviously, we don't know the results of that. I'm not going to go through every game this week because there are about 5 games that really stand out. And let's start with the AFC South, because about a month ago, we were talking about this division. I think it was exactly a month ago, we talked about who our division winners were, and we kind of disregarded this division. The Colts were in such good form. This was a foregone conclusion. And speaking right now, the Colts aren't even top of the division as things stand. The Jags are top on a tiebreaker, which I don't think anyone really saw coming. Not so drastically the turnaround, but the Jags are sitting on 8-4 now. So are the Colts on 8-4, and the Texans are 1 game behind on 7-5. So this division has gone from one of the most one-sided, obvious, we all know what's happening division to one of the most open divisions in the whole NFL, and potentially the one you could argue where it's most likely that 3 separate teams make the playoffs. So a remarkable turnaround for this division as a whole. The Jags battered the Chargers a couple of weeks ago. Then they did the professional job against the Titans. The Texans have 4 wins in a row, including 3 wins of those coming for Davis Mills. And now you've got the Colts, who have to play the Jags. This is real make or break stuff. This is for Daniel Jones, for Jonathan Taylor. So we'll get into the stats in a little bit, but just quickly, which way do you see this going?
This week, I think that the way things are trending, I think you've got to say Jacksonville. Firstly, Jacksonville are 5-2, I think, over the last since 2022 against Indianapolis. They seem to be a bit of a bogey, which is never a good thing for a divisional team. So I would be concerned. I'm always concerned about Daniel Jones not playing in a dome. Obviously, being at Lucas Oil, he's got that benefit, but away from home, he doesn't have that. 2 weeks from now, he goes to Seattle in December against that defense. So yeah, that's again not a matchup where I'm really feeling particularly good about a one-legged Daniel Jones, who, where credit's due, is playing with a fractured leg. I think a lot of people hear that and they think, how? But obviously it's playable and they're not overly concerned. But you could see from the game, right, that he wasn't on QB sneaks. They brought Tyler Warren in at the goal line for those, or for the short yardage work. Tyler Warren had a stomach virus as well going into that game. If I have had some bad turkey or whatever it might be at Thanksgiving, and I go into the Sunday games feeling a little bit jippy, the last thing I want to do is try and do a goal line push and have 600 pounds worth of players land on top of me.
Well, he fumbled it, didn't he? He fumbled it, Tyler Warren.
He did, out of sheer fear of what might happen to the amount of pressure probably coming down on him. So yeah, I'm concerned about the Indianapolis Colts, mainly because their run-in's not easy. Away to Jacksonville, away to Seattle, like we've already said. They then host San Francisco, host Jacksonville, and then visit the Texans. I mean, when you look at the fact that over the last 5 weeks, they've had their bye week in there. Over the last 4 weeks, they're 1-4. One of those wins coming in, or the one win coming in overtime over the Atlanta Falcons, who are finding ways to lose at the moment. I'd be very concerned about the fact that that is not a trajectory that I'd want the team to be on, and the teams that are coming down the pipe for them are not about to let up.
No, and the Jags, just to speak to them, they have one of the league's best rushing defenses this season. They've been so good. Liam Cohen has done wonders there in his first season as a head coach. They're the only team in the AFC to allow 10 or fewer points 4 times this year. And everyone likes to talk about Myles Garrett, and rightly so. He's probably going to break the all-time single-season sack record this season. But Josh Hines-Allen is having an unbelievable season for the Jags. Him, Garrett, and Crosby are the only 3 players with 6 sacks and 10 tackles for loss in 6 of the last 7 seasons. These are elite guys, and the Jags win every game that Hines-Allen turns up in. So this is a serious defense. The Colts, as you say, are on a downward trajectory. We talked about the Cowboys going up. It feels like the Colts are the team doing the opposite at the moment. As good as Daniel Jones has been, I think now Jonathan Taylor is out of this MVP conversation. He's had a couple of quieter weeks where, I said about 3 weeks ago, if you're going to win MVP as a running back, you have to break the Daniel Tomlinson's record. You have to be the best running back season of all time. And I don't think he's going to get there now because of a couple quieter weeks. So I'm with you. I lean the way of Jacksonville in this game, which, having watched them played at Wembley and get dismantled by the Rams, I didn't think I'd have been stood here saying that, which is, that really surprises me. So, yeah, I think the Jags go 9-4 this week. Not to rule out the Colts. They're still a very good team. They're the highest scoring offense in the whole of football, as I mentioned earlier. So they'll still be well in this game. But yeah, I'm with you. I lean the way of Jacksonville. That's not the only game really where both teams at the top of a division on the same record play as well, because the other one is the Steelers against the Ravens. Now, let's try and take away from these two teams for a moment, because this is something that me and you spoke about a couple of days ago. I don't like in the NFL that a team could be the 4th seed with 6-6. I think it's absolutely right that all the division winners go through. But for me, it should be a case of you fit in, if you're the best team, because one of the division winners will obviously be the number 1 seed. It won't, that's not the case. That's fine that they're the number 1 seed. I've got no issue with that. But then for me, the next 6 teams should be the 3 division winners, the 3 best teams. But that should be in the order of the team's records, personally, for me. I think it's mad that the Steelers right now, if they had the better tiebreaker over the Ravens, would be the 4th seeds in the AFC. That doesn't sit right with me at all. And I know that's been the case, and I know me and you talking about it won't change diddly squat. But do you like the system as it is? Do you see where I'm coming from that perspective? Maybe it's because I'm a Chargers fan and we're just perpetually going to be a wild card team, and that's where we are, and that's my bias from there. But your team as well, the Bills right now, both of our teams are 8-4 and are the 5th and the 7th seed behind the Ravens and the Steelers, who are 6-6.
Yeah, I can understand it. I think I can definitely understand it, bearing in mind, we've all sat here on the AFC side watching whoever won the AFC South, tickle their way towards 9-8 or 9-7 over the seasons, and then be higher than, the NFC North last season was ridiculous, the number of wins that didn't win the divisional title. I think, do I like it? I think it's fun in a way. So I think it is, when you've got the likes of the Washington Commanders being the number 1 seed with a negative record, there's a degree of, it's almost like a bit of a patsy sort of situation where you're looking at it going, there's jeopardy in the playoffs. I feel like if that was the other way around, they'd make the playoffs, but maybe we should just go one step further at that point and just say, well, why are they even there in the first place? Because ultimately, there's really no point. So I understand both sides of it. I think that when you get into that, you start getting into the, oh, well, we've got a more difficult schedule than you. And I think that it's, I think representation of all the divisions is a good thing. I don't know. I think sometimes these things, they come back around to roost. And I think one day there'll be a scenario where my Bills will be kind of limping into the playoffs potentially. And there'll be a team sat kind of with 12 wins kind of looking at us. Admittedly, probably licking their lips, but at least we'll have home field advantage for it.
Yeah, maybe so. So getting into the actual game then, I'm not sure if you've looked across everything that I was talking to you about earlier, but I was surprised how many of the last 10 regular season games between the Ravens and the Steelers do you think the Ravens have won?
I think that this is one of those matchups where the Ravens, I haven't looked, but I think the Ravens have a horrible record against them.
I asked for a number.
Oh, you asked for a number? I'm sorry.
Yeah. How many of the last 10 do you think the Ravens have won?
Three.
Yeah, it's 2.
Oh, okay,
So,
close. Yeah.
and the Steelers are always above 500.
Mm.
When I say always, I mean under Mike Tomlin. But that surprises me given how dominant the Ravens have been in recent years as well. As you say, this is one of their teams that they just come unstuck against. That
Yeah.
being said, I don't see that being the case on Sunday because the post game atmosphere at Acrisure Stadium in Pittsburgh on Sunday was not nice. I've never seen so many Steelers fans calling for Tomlin's head as I did after Sunday's game. It feels very unpleasant there right now. And losing to the Ravens, who, as we've just said, they dominate in recent years, it might not be the nail in the coffin, but it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back for a slightly less dark analogy. So, are you with me? Do you see the Ravens winning this? I think momentum is so big in sport, and I know that they lost to the Bengals, but I think the Bengals with Joe Burrow were having that quarterback back bounce, and the Steelers are just such in a bad place right now. I can't see them getting anything out of it.
I think what's really strange for me, obviously the Bills, I was very, very worried about the Bills going up against Pittsburgh. I know obviously Aaron Rodgers is injured and that fundamentally changed the way they had to play that game. He was taking everything from kind of under center. And it just completely changed the dynamic of what plays you can actually call. I think in that position, Tomlin's found himself in that Rodgers wants to play, but maybe someone should make the call to say, you're actually hurting the team here because, the defense knows what's coming. I think what was surprising was, and TJ Watt actually alluded to this in his post-match press conference, he said he's never seen a team before call the same play over and over again, and it works so much. Almost as he's calling out his own teammates there. That the Bills really just ran duo again and again and again, and the Steelers just had no answer for the fact that with 2 backup tackles going up against that Steelers defense, basically they just ran James Cook down their throat and ran for like, what was it, 246 yards in the end, I think, something close to that, which is the most the Steelers have ever conceded at home. So the reason why I'm backing probably the Ravens in this game is purely because I don't see how the Steelers pick themselves up from that manner of defeat. They need to. I don't think the Ravens have been particularly appealing on the eye. I don't think Lamar's 100%, but I think they can definitely win this game without Lamar being 100%, and I think that's probably what will happen.
Yeah, and James Cook touched the ball 35 times in that game last week, which is an insane number for a running back in a game. And Derrick Henry is just such a workhorse. He's not having his best season ever, but he still has 931 yards and 10 touchdowns. This is not a quiet season. We're only saying it's a quiet season because of what Derrick Henry has done before. Yeah. So this has still been a decent season for King Henry. And if they can't stop James Cook and Josh Allen, I don't see them stopping the Henry Lamar combo either. Even though Lamar has looked a bit off the pace since he's come back from injury, I think a lot of that does come down through the injury.
The Steelers also just lost Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle, which I thought was interesting when they released that he's done for the season. They said that apparently the Steelers drafted him in, as a result of how the Ravens playoff loss went, basically, that they just got run over completely, which I thought was interesting because obviously, drafting a player for one sole purpose of we're fed up of being run over by a team it's a peculiar choice. Saying that as a Bills fan, where we drafted the fastest cornerback, probably because we're potentially going to have to face Xavier Worthy, although that might not happen this season. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one, but I do expect probably Derrick Henry to carry them to victory over the Steelers. Which I'd be worried for the Steelers. I think the Bengals aren't that far behind them. I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true. So
the Bengals aren't officially out of the playoff race, and I don't want to go too much into this because I'm going to give you a bit of a memory test at the end. But yeah, the Bengals, if they win against the Bills this weekend, still have a 7% chance of making the playoffs. So it isn't over for the Bengals. It would be the most. You want to talk about MVP potential comebacks? You can't ever win it off that many games. I know Joe Burrow must be like. Could you be comeback player of the year within the same season? Is that a thing? Can you do that?
I don't know. I don't know if they've got any rules around it being the same season. I mean, it'd be good. You could just give the MVP to, or even actually maybe just the comeback to Joe. Just Flacco and Burrow can just share the award.
Yeah.
Just, Flacco came back from Cleveland and, played that amazing Thursday night game against Pittsburgh and survived behind the offensive line. And yeah, Burrow's coming back in. And yeah, I think their schedule, I mean, if they beat the Bills, I think their schedule is very winnable down the stretch, certainly more so than the Steelers. And yeah, they could finish with a positive record. That might be enough.
So you're saying there's a chance. That's what you're saying there for.
There's a chance
for the Bengals. There's, as I say, there's plenty of interesting games this week. I'm going to get on to all the AFC West game teams are involved in interesting games. So I'll leave that to the end. But the NFC North, as we've already mentioned, the Chicago Bears are currently the 1 seed in the NFC. Now, I don't know if that's because of the new Pope. I don't know if that's just genuine, some sort of miracle. Yeah. Even the most hardened Bears fans didn't predict this coming. You'd have had good money on the Bengals and the Bears and the Patriots being the 1 seeds going into week 14. But the Chicago Bears at 9-3 at Lambeau Field to take on the 8-3-1 Green Bay Packers on Sunday. The Bears have the most takeaways in the league. Defense, they've been really good. And Caleb Williams and the plethora of options and weapons he has around him have been good enough. They've not been incredible, but they've been good enough. They're kind of how I described the Broncos, or what I thought the Broncos would be this season, which is the best defense in the NFL and good enough on offense. That's kind of been Chicago's way this season. Kevin Byard has 6 interceptions. He's been brilliant. On the flip side, you've got Green Bay, who we've already talked about what they've been like this season. So maybe this is sort of the recency bias again. I see Bears at, Lambeau Field, and I want to say this is going to be an easy Packers win. But we have to give the Bears credit here. And I would, because of the Packers, which Jordan Love is going to turn up on Sunday?
Precisely that. Kind of call back to, are we going to get the potential MVP candidate, or are we going to get someone who at times just really fails to inspire? And I know a lot of that comes from the play calling. The Packers really haven't been able to set the run. I actually recently, our good friend John was, kind of, moaning is probably a strong word, but kind of considering Josh Jacobs and the step back he's made in fantasy football. And I gave him a stat to say, it's not Josh, it's the offensive line. That offensive line, year on year, so going back 2023, 2024, and then 2025, the yards before contact is regressed massively, whereas Josh Jacobs' yards after contact have actually stayed largely the same. Obviously, you're getting hit much harder and slower velocity, so he's not seen as big of a step back there. So it is the offensive line. They can't set the run, and I think that then changes the dynamic of how aggressive Jordan Love plays some of those games. The Packers right now are a 6.5 point favorite to win that. Obviously, home field.
Wow.
Well, home field normally gives you 2.5 to 3 points anyway. So there is something in that, but I really think that there's a chance here that this Bears team are improving. They're certainly a much better side than what we saw at the start of the season, and they're getting fitter as well. I mean, we've just seen Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon come back from injury reserve. They are 2 very good players to be getting back into that defense. And if they continue to just get better and better as we approach the playoffs, then at this rate, given the way the league is playing, there's no reason why you wouldn't assume that the Bears will be one of the favorite teams to kind of reach the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, as I touched upon right at the top, the Bears are the number 1 seed in the NFC with that 9-3 record, but they have a lower chance of making, statistically according to the NFL, and I think it's next-gen stats, they have a lower percentage chance of reaching the playoffs than the Rams, the Eagles, the Bucks, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the 49ers, despite being the number 1 seeds, which I don't think I've ever seen before. I'd love to know if that's the first time in week 14 that the number one seed has had a lower chance of making the playoffs than any other team in the NFC playoff picture. So, that's a bit bizarre, but I think that speaks to how, we just didn't expect this from the Bears. I think the stats will still look at their schedule as well, and they have to play these hard teams in the NFC North. That's the issue with having a fun competitive division, is you have to play them all twice. So that is the issue for the Bears. But yeah, I wouldn't rule them out winning this game. I'm surprised it's 6.5 points. That's more, there's a bigger swing than I thought it would be. But that, Lambeau Field this time of year, it's not a fun place to be, unless you've got cheese on your head. So if you've got cheese on your head, you probably love it. Moving on to the games involving the AFC West teams, I don't want to spend long on the Broncos Raiders game because we all know who's going to win this game. Sorry to Las Vegas fans, but this is a very one-sided game on paper. But what I want to just quickly touch upon is how the Broncos just keep winning games, but they still don't look convincing. We talked about the Treylon Burks and Marcus Mariota touchdown, but it took them to overtime. Washington, a team who looked completely out of it, didn't look like they could be very competitive, and they really took Denver the distance in this game. And Bo Nix is still winning games. He's got 20 regular season wins since he entered the league, and only 5 quarterbacks have ever won more than that. And you're talking about big names: Dan Marino, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. But every time I watch the Broncos, I'm just like, this team is the number 2 seeds. This team has won 10 games out of 12. It surprises me. And it surprises me in the sense that when you watch it on paper, as I've said many times, this was my Super Bowl pick. So it doesn't surprise me that they're doing well, but I thought they'd be looking better than what they are.
So if we play a little game where we rewind an entire year into 2024, was there a team last season, Phil, where maybe as you watched them, you felt like the offense was sputtering a lot and maybe didn't seem all that convincing, but the defense largely kept them in games and they were winning 1-score games and they were never truly out of it, and they found themselves with a record of 10-2 or maybe even 11-1? Was there a team that ended up going really rather deep in the playoffs as a result of exactly that?
Deep, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know who you're getting at here.
Yeah. I think you know that I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, right? So, last season, their defense is incredibly solid and the offense just kind of failed to really flatter. And we're seeing that, but we almost, towards the back end of last season, we did see Bo Nix play in a particularly different way. It just hasn't seemed to really click, and they're not really putting up points. But I think they're the 4th lowest points conceded. I think it's only Seattle, the Rams, and the Texans that have conceded less points than them, or fewer points. So they've got a real defense, and they've done part of that without Pat Surtain as well, which is mightily impressive. The thing I find most perplexing about the Denver Broncos is that every time I watch them, Riley Moss is getting cooked, or he's giving up some sort of major penalty. But then when you hear people talk about Riley Moss, everyone waxes lyrically about him, and he never gets pulled from a game. And I think it's really interesting when most people would look at that and go, he's getting beaten, for a touchdown there. I think it literally happened on the weekend, or he's conceded another holding penalty or pass interference, kind of OPI, or DPI, I should say. You'd normally see that player get pulled, but obviously what they're doing is they're putting him in matchups that if he's the only person that they can pick on, the rest of the defense have got everything locked down. And if you're then managing a game over the course of that entire time, and that, okay, Riley will give up some points here, he's actually doing a really good job for the team for what we've asked. We know he's outmatched by some of these bigger receivers or some of these just elite future Hall of Famers, but he doesn't kind of walk away from that. And I think it means that they can lock down certain areas of the field and actually kind of slowly choke a team down the field, which is ultimately, so maybe they're not the best defense. I think probably the Texans look ultra aggressive at the moment. Just like they can win games by themselves. But yeah, I think the Broncos are just really solid in a season where inconsistency seems to not really get punished all that much, and you're never more than two or three wins away from suddenly being in charge of your division again. Or as the Colts, in the Colts case, you drop 3 and 4 and suddenly you're in trouble. Kudos to the Broncos for just putting it together and going under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, just a final point on this, looking at the numbers, because we love the numbers and we try not to say facts that are completely nonsense because we like to back it up. But the Broncos are the first team since the Titans in 2021 to win 6 games by 3 or fewer points in a season. They've won 3 consecutive games by that margin, and only 2 teams in NFL history have won more games in a season by 3 or fewer points, and that's the Panthers and the Cardinals in 2003 and 1998. So this is a team that is winning, because the Chiefs were winning 1-score games, but most of them were by 7 points. The Broncos are winning games by 2 points, 1 point, 3 at max. So, they are scraping their way through games, but they're winning games, and that's ultimately the most important thing in football. It's 1 point win over the Commanders, 3 points against the Chiefs, 3 points against the Raiders, 3 points against the Texans, the last 4 games, and then they battered the Cowboys the week before that. But even before that, 1 point win, 2 point win, 4 point win. These are such close games that they've been in, but they've won 9 in a row. So they're still on track. And you use the comparison to last season's Chiefs. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they got there.
Got close.
That's half the battle. On the subject of the Chiefs, they're 6-6. They're at Arrowhead this weekend against the Texans, who we've mentioned have won 4 straight games. CJ Stroud is back. They were a team that, when we talked about it a few weeks ago, I said that I still fancied them to make the playoffs because of how good their defense was. You said it would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. We might have both been right. Who knows? We could have both been right on that front. This is a massive game. I think of all the games we've talked about so far, this one might be the one with the biggest sort of ramifications, because you'd fancy the Bears and the Packers, regardless of the results, to probably both make the playoffs. Actually, the Ravens Steelers is the other one where, the ramifications could be huge, particularly for the loser. Because if the Chiefs lose this game and they drop to 6-7, their playoff chance goes down to 11%. And I don't think the Chargers win lots of games. We'll get onto them in a moment. But the Chargers are 2 games ahead of the Chiefs with 5 games remaining. If the Chiefs lose on Sunday to the Texans, which is a real possibility, it could be curtains for them. And that would be a remarkable way for this run of 10 successive AFC West divisional titles to come to an end by not making the playoffs. The Texans, on the flip side, if they win, they've got a chance, an 83% chance of making the playoffs. Enormous, because of the run that they have been on since we talked about them. So the Texans, you alluded to it when you were talking about the Broncos. The defense is so good. Will Anderson Jr., we've glazed a few times on this podcast about how good he is. Danielle Hunter as well. This is a very, very good team and a capable offense. The interesting thing is, though, they look better with Davis Mills than CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
Is CJ Stroud the right man to guide them here?
So I think the thing with CJ Stroud this season, I think there comes a point where you start really wondering about your offensive line. And I do wonder whether or not with Davis Mills, he's simplified it. In the win over the Bills, he didn't win the game over against the Bills. We know how that game was decided. And I think, the reason why the Bills couldn't get any pressure, I think we sacked Davis Mills once in that game, was because he got the ball out after 2.2 seconds, which is unbelievably quick, because he knew that, okay, if his first read isn't there, get rid, punt it, pin them back. He knows the assignment. I think CJ Stroud probably has higher aspirations and higher expectations. They're probably calling slightly different plays, but I also do think that there's some degree of, he's got a lack of confidence in his offensive line still. I think that does show with how some of the plays kind of play out, basically. Would they be better playing Davis Mills? No, I can't commit that far. Just because I think there will come a time deep in the playoffs where they do need someone to produce some magic, and I don't think Davis Mills can do that. CJ Stroud, you at least need to roll the dice on him. Kind of, we've seen him do it before, so you're going to want to roll the dice on that.
Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the field, he's only had 22 passing. I say only. He's having a really good year despite the Chiefs' season. It's been one of his better seasons statistically for the last 2 or 3 years. He's got 22 touchdowns on the year. I've got a quick quiz question for you. I won't go through all of them, but if he gets, he probably won't get 3 passing touchdowns in this game, given how good Derek Stingley has been. But he's only 3 touchdowns away from becoming the 6th player all time with 25 passing touchdowns in 8 consecutive seasons, which would, and the list he would join is a very stellar list. Can you name off the top of your head any of the other 5 quarterbacks you think would be in this list?
So 25 passing touchdowns in 8 consecutive seasons. Well, Brady's got to be one of those. He's probably did it twice, knowing how long he played for.
Brady only did it once, but it was for 10 consecutive seasons. Someone did it for 13. 2 quarterbacks did it for 11. And then 1 other quarterback did it for 8 as well.
Oh, 13. Or someone's going to be Brett Favre.
No, not Brett Favre.
Really? Okay, interesting. I think there's going to be some interesting Philip Rivers, because
Philip Rivers is in this list. Yeah, he did it 11 times from 2008 to 2018.
Yeah, because you got to think Iron Man as well. Did Eli Manning do it?
Eli Manning did not do it. No, but Manning did do it.
Manning did do it. So, yeah, Peyton would have done it then.
Peyton did it. Holds the record for 13 consecutive seasons, which is a hell of a feat. So yeah, Peyton Manning has 13. Philip Rivers has 11. There's another one on 11. Retired more recently, but has lots and lots of NFL records.
Ben Roethlisberger.
No, you went to a different part. Drew Brees was the one.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the other one who did it 8 times. He's one of the highest paid players in the league who hardly plays, although he is playing now.
Oh, Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, yes, did it 8 times from 2015 to 2022. So,
Kirk, love it.
Patrick Mahomes would join that esteemed list of quarterbacks and Kirk Cousins if he manages to get 3 passing touchdowns. He'll do that at some point between now and the end of the season. But yeah, it could be curtains for the Chiefs if they lose this game. So, for massive one for them and massive one for the Texans. And then the final game of the week, I think it's called the Slime Game. Is that right? The Monsters Inc. Bowl.
Oh yeah, we're getting the Monsters Inc. Yeah,
it's the one game or a couple of games a year where the NFL decide to pander to kids and make the game look absolutely insane.
What's been your favourite though? Because there's been some classics. We've had The Simpsons.
None of them. I watched none of them. I watched them all on the regular version. I'm a grumpy old man. My Spotify rap told me I have an age of 59 today, and that sums me up. I'm an old man in a young man's body, although my body's breaking down as well. But yeah, although one of my colleagues got 75 on his age, and that made me feel a hell of a lot better.
I'll go take a look at that. That's going to be painful. The Simpsons version was good. Seeing, I think it was Lisa Simpson throw a pass to Bart Simpson or whatever it was. They obviously kind of made certain players certain key characters. The Nickelodeon one is always fun with the slime. I say fun, obviously, I don't really care for the slime element, but yeah, it's interesting. So I'm gonna check it out. Toy Story. Do you see the Toy Story version?
No, because I don't like this. I'm sorry. I'm a grumpy old man, and I don't like the word winningest, and I don't like animated, over-the-top versions of just let me watch my Chargers play a normal game on Monday Night Football. That's all I ask. It's not too much, is it?
Yeah. Maybe I'll stop asking if you like it then. I'm gonna. You can cut this from the pod if you want, right? But I am gonna remind you now that somewhere in the chat, right? And if you go back to September, I said I'd just like to remind everyone that I predicted the Chiefs would finish 3rd in the division and not make the playoffs this year. So it's happening. It might be the only thing I get right this season, but I would damn well make sure everybody remembers it.
Well, in this off-season, we did an episode focused on each division one by one. And in the AFC West episode, I predicted that it would go Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders. So as things stand, I'm looking pretty good for that as well. And Mark, our Broncos writer, he also had the Broncos top, but he had Chiefs second. So as things stand, I was the only one who predicted that right. So we're in the same
That's
boat.
impressive.
on that. But I respected Liam, who's the Raiders fan, for putting the Raiders second at the time, and he's messaged me a few times during this season going, I hate this season. So yeah, it's not been fun for the Raiders, it's fair to say. Moving away from slime and any other animated football games. Yeah. This one will be animated, but I'm not talking about it any further. It's the Chargers against the Eagles. Now, I do want to mention the Chargers because A, they're my team. You can see the shirt behind me. But Justin Herbert, we don't know at the point of recording if he's going to be playing in this game. By the time you listen to this on Saturday, there's still a chance that won't be known because this is the Monday night game. Broke his hand against the Raiders, came back out onto the field, got shoved to the ground by Max Crosby. Justin Herbert is, and I'm not saying this as a Chargers fan, he's one of the toughest quarterbacks that I watch week in, week out. The guy plays through broken ribs, broken hands, the lot. And I remember particularly against the Chiefs at Arrowhead a few years ago, they didn't win the game, but he brought them back from the point of oblivion in that game when he could hardly move. And Jim Harbaugh was talking about it in the press conference afterwards. I think he said that Brett Favre was the only other quarterback he's watched who was just as hard as Justin Herbert is. And I think because he looks so young, he's got long wavy hair and there's no beard. I think people, easily dismiss him as being a bit younger, but he's a tough cookie, Justin Herbert. So I think, firstly, if Herbert's not back for this game, the Chargers don't beat the Eagles. With the greatest respect to Trey Lance, it would be funny to see if Trey Lance can outrun Jalen Hurts on Monday Night Football, but I don't think he could, given how drastically bad the Chargers' offensive line is. And the offensive line is the reason I want to mention this quickly, because the Chargers' last 5 games of the season, they play the Eagles, the Texans, the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys. Now, other than the Cowboys, whose defense is improving as the season goes on, but it's not a defensive front you're terrified for your quarterback's life in.
Yeah.
But the other 4 games, good God, I'm scared for Justin Herbert. He's just come off a game against Max Crosby, chasing him around the field and then just shoving him to the ground off plays. Then you've got the scary Eagles defensive front, Chris Jones and the Chiefs, and then the Texans and the Broncos, who are 2 of the best defenses in the league. I'm absolutely terrified for Herbert staying upright. I would just say, who needs running backs anymore? Put 6 offensive linemen, stick them round him, and then just hope he can find Keenan and Ladd every play, because otherwise at some point he's going down, I really fear, in this month. And I don't think anyone out there would say that the Chargers have a hope of winning a playoff game without Justin Herbert. So I have a real concern, not just in this game, but moving forward this month. I hope he's out there, because the Chargers are 8-4. They're like the Bills. They're in the 5th seed as things stand. They're 4-0 in the division, which is massive for their playoff chances, because they will have a tiebreaker over the Chiefs if they get to that point and they're the 2 teams in it. So that's big, but that run of games against such good defenses is tough. How do you see this game going on Monday? Because on the flip side of the field, to try and give me some sort of confidence, the Eagles haven't looked great.
No.
This week, Sirianni's come out and he's defended the the offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, who I know Nathan, our Eagles writer, has probably written the words Kevin Patullo with steam coming out of his ears 20 times this season already, because it's not working there. AJ Brown has had, I think, 10 plus targets in 3 straight weeks. So he's chilled out and promised not to tweet as much about his issues. But this isn't the top 3 defense we were expecting. There have been injuries, of course. The offensive line hasn't been as good as we expected. And Saquon Barkley, understandably, there was always going to be some regression this year from last year, but hasn't been as good. So try and make me feel better about this Monsters Inc. game. And why am I finding monsters under the bed, or should I be more confident in Chargers winning this one?
I think if Herbert is playing, then there is a chance. And I think the main reason is that it gives you an opportunity to manage the game. Obviously, I think Marion Hampton might be back. I don't know if you probably know more than me, but I think we are expecting him to be activated.
Likely is the word they've used as of the point of this recording. Likely that he'll return, but he hasn't actually been lifted off IR quite yet.
Unless he's put on 80 pounds and grown a foot, then it's not the player you want coming back, is it? But I think one of the things that strikes me about this game is that it's got an over-under of 40.5 points, which if you told anyone that at the start of the season, this probably would be with these two high-octane potential offenses, you would have expected more than that. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. I will say this, that obviously Jalen Phillips has looked very good coming into this Eagles team. Nolan Smith is back from IR now as well. The Eagles defense has been fairly solid. It is surprising that they've started feeding AJ Brown the last couple of weeks and they lose both games, which I think is staggering. But yeah, I'm just not confident that the Eagles won't just simply kick field goals to win this game. I think Jesse Minter is going to have to not just stop the Eagles, but he's going to have to almost turn the game, in the Chargers' favor. Whether that's just with takeaways or it's going to be an aggressive game plan. One thing that does, if you need one glimmer of hope, it's that is it a coincidence that with Lane Johnson out, that they've started losing games. Because I think that he makes such a big difference to that offensive line. So
he's the Eagles' Joe Alt, isn't he? For the sort of, it doesn't surprise me that they've started looking worse without him. In the same, it didn't surprise me that the Chargers' season hopes jumped off a cliff when Joe Alt went down. So yeah, if it was the Eagles maybe a few weeks ago, I would be significantly more worried. I think it's at SoFi Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, this game. So this isn't, I'm not sitting here saying that the Eagles are going to win this game handsomely and it'll be super easy. I've had a scan through the Eagles games this season and looking at games where they've run away with it, and there aren't many, if any. The only game they've won by more than one score on quick glance is against the Giants. And I think that was that a Jackson Dartless Giants? So no, Jackson Dart was in that game. But, that's when, Jalen Hurts threw 4 touchdowns in that game. He had his best game of the season. So with the exception of that game, they haven't won any game by more than one score. They lost against the Bears last time out. They lost against the Cowboys the game before that. So this isn't the Eagles that were playing in the Super Bowl last year. But I if you keep Justin Herbert, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? You keep Herbert clean pocket, and I think the Chargers win this game. But I just don't see how that happens against this Eagles defensive front. Unfortunately, before we go, we've got we don't really know what we've got lined up for each other, so it's hard to introduce the section. But we both decided that we would line up some sort of trivia to make the other one look silly, and I'll let you open this Christmas cracker to start.
Okay, so I was trying to come up with a good name for this. I've got 5 teams for you that are real NFL franchises. Obviously not current, because that would be way too obvious for you. So they have at some point played an NFL game in the league's illustrious past. And I also have 5 teams for you that are not
made up.
NFL. Yeah, they are made up. They're either made up or they are simply not an NFL team. Okay. So they may well exist, but not having played an NFL game as of right now, anyway.
I already don't like this.
You will be fine. You will be fine. So I'll give you. I'll kick us off with the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
The Hamilton Tiger Cats. See, this just sounds so made up, but I don't feel like you'd have started off with a made up one, because I don't know why. That's absolutely awful logic, but I'm going to say that was a real team at some point.
So I'll tell you, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they play on a gridiron, but they play Canadian Football League. So it is
wrong.
The Canadian Hamilton is wrong. It is wrong. They are a Canadian football team. All right, number 2 then. I'll give you the Columbus Panhandles.
I hate this game. The Columbus Panhandles.
Columbus Panhandles, Phil.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to say this one was a team.
So the Columbus Panhandles, yes, they were a team.
They were a team. Okay, wonderful.
They were a team. You are on the board. They played They had a staggering record of 3 wins and 22 losses over the course of 3 seasons between 1920 and 1922. So early
Oh, of
days
course,
team.
my 1921 season knowledge. Forgot about that.
Absolutely.
Forgot
Yeah,
about the panhandles. Yeah.
you forget about the panhandles. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to give you the Buffalo Bison. What do we think of the Buffalo Bison?
I'm going to say that this isn't a team, or is
Okay.
a team. It is a team, but it's not a team that have ever played in the NFL.
Oh, Phil, they've not only played once, they've not only played twice, they've played 3 different times. They rebooted the Buffalo Bisons into the NFL 3 different times in history. They played in 1946, they played in 1924, they played in 1927, and each time they folded because they weren't very good. They had a 1-12-1 season, they had a 7-11 season, and they had a 3-10 season. It was not very good. They then became in the future they became the Buffalo Bills, but they were originally the Buffalo Bisons.
And there we
So
go.
they are an original team. Okay, we'll give you the Arlington Renegades,
Arlington is in Texas.
as in
Um,
Texas. Yeah,
as in Texas. The Renegades. I'll say the Arlington Renegades are not a. We're not an NFL team.
yeah, you'd be correct. The Arlington Renegades were the XFL champions. The Dwayne the Rock Johnson, Vince McMahon spin-off league
Yes.
that I think is now completely folded again. But yeah, they were the winners. I think some of those players then eventually came over to the NFL. But yeah, they are an XFL team. Brilliant. Okay, let's have the Portsmouth Spartans. What do you think of the Portsmouth Spartans?
Portsmouth Spartans. Portsmouth, assuming not on the south coast of England. Well, I thought that there was a Spartans in the British League. So maybe you're trying to throw me off here, and that is a English or British NFL team or American football team. So I'll say no again.
Okay, so you don't believe the Portsmouth Spartans have ever played a game in the NFL. You, my friend, no longer believe that the Detroit Lions had a founding father, because the Portsmouth Spartans became the Detroit Lions. In 1930 to 33, they went 28-16.
So is Portsmouth in Michigan then?
Portsmouth, Michigan, yeah. So
Right.
they were the original team, one of the founding teams of the NFL when it rebranded from its kind of original name, and then yeah, eventually became the Detroit Lions. Okay, I'm going to give you the Houston Gamblers.
I see. Now I'd support this team.
Yeah, you like the
I'd back
Houston
this team.
Gamblers?
I feel like I'd buy a jersey of this team, but I don't think it was a team in the NFL, because I'm going to say that they would have. Oh no, that's way too forward thinking. That they wouldn't have had gambling as a name. I'll still say no though.
Okay. You know what? It's sound logic, and it's got you to the right answer. So the Houston Gamblers are a UFL team, or a USFL team. So the league that started in the 1980s. Jim Kelly, my boy, he was drafted to the Houston Gamblers, and then
Wow.
drafted by the Bills, and he chose the Houston Gamblers in the USFL because he didn't want to go and play in a snowy city. And then after 2 seasons, the Houston Gamblers folded, as did the rest of the league, and he had to go and join the Bills, and the rest is history, as they say. Okay, let's keep it moving. I'm going to give you the Greenville Swamp Rabbits. What do you think of the
Right.
Greenville Swamp Rabbits?
So this is the first one that I know the answer to.
Ah, excellent. And why do you know the answer to this one?
I know the answer to this because the Greenville Swamp Rabbits are an ice hockey team with the head coach of Andrew Lord, who was the Cardiff Devils head coach.
Excellent. I'm so proud of you. See, you feared this round, and there was nothing to fear. Greenville Swamp Rabbits are an ECHL ice hockey team, fantastically named. Correctly coached by Andrew Lord.
And
So
Joey Haddad, I think, also Cardiff Devils ice hockey legends, also played for the Greenville Swamp Rabbits.
He has indeed. Okay, super. I'm going to give you the Dayton Triangles. What do you think of the Dayton Triangles?
I'm going to say yes.
You think they're real?
I think they were going to be one of the other sort of founding, maybe in Miami.
You'd be absolutely spot on to the founding. They ran for 9 whole seasons, 1920 to 1929. No idea. I haven't bothered to even find out why they were called the Triangles, because that's an amazing name. They had a record of 18, 51, and 8. So yeah, solid attempt.
I'm guessing. I guessed Miami because I heard Dayton, and obviously there's Daytona Beach, which is in Florida, and then that's close to the Bermuda Triangle. So that was my really bad logic behind. I guess
that's wild logic. And
yes.
I'm 90% sure that it is Dayton, Ohio.
Right.
I think all of these kind of historic teams came out of the Ohio, Indiana sort of area. So I'm pretty sure that that's the local. What about the Staten Island Stapletons? What do you think
Staten Island Stapletons. See, now I've lost track of how many I've got right and wrong.
Yes, exactly.
And how many are right or wrong. The Staten Island Stapletons, I'm going to say incorrect, as in they weren't an NFL team.
Hate to disappoint you, Staten Island Stapletons, 1929 to 1932, 14, 22, and 9. And I mentioned it earlier that I've got a hell of a statistic about this team, right? Stapletons, if you're wondering what a Stapleton is a suburb of Staten Island.
So they're the Staten Islanders.
Yeah, it's unusual, isn't it? It's like you supporting the Cardiff City Buttes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, what I love about the Staten Island Stapletons is that they had a guy playing for them called Jack Shapiro. Jack Shapiro played for them in the 1920s, and to this day, he still holds a record, Phil. He played for them in 1929. Would you like to guess what that record might be?
I mean, I don't even know of the name. I don't know the position, and I couldn't tell you for the... Is it the most... No, I'm not.
It's not the most of anything. If anything, it's the least.
Oh, it's the least.
Is it the
fewest combined passing yards in a season?
Oh, so this is well before those sorts of statistics are recorded. What I love about this is that Jack Shapiro was a old position called a blocking back, right? So before you had quarterbacks, halfbacks, before the forward pass and all of this, you had a blocking back whose job was, much like the fullback is today, to block, right? Jack Shapiro was 5'1" and 119 pounds. And he is, to this day, the shortest NFL player to ever have played a league game in the NFL. And I love that statistic.
That is a good stat.
After 100 years, that has not been broken. That is staggering.
What would be the smallest position? As in, like Tank Dell is small. I'm trying to think of
Tank Dell is small, yeah.
In the current NFL. And
Tez Johnson is 5'4".
So Tez Johnson's 5'4", is he?
I believe so, yeah.
He's a wide receiver, obviously. Tez Johnson, the rookie for the Bucks, but Tez Johnson, it says here, is 5'10".
Really?
Yeah. So I'm gonna look.
Maybe that's not true then. Who am I thinking of?
I'm looking at Tank Dell height, and Tank Dell is 5'8", and he is considered very small in the NFL. So I guess in wide receiver is the smallest position that you could play.
Kicker, I guess you'd be kicker or some sort of returner. But I mean, yeah, you're starting to get onto the fringes there.
What was the name of the Cowboys drafted a running back maybe 2 seasons ago?
Oh, Deuce Vaughn.
Deuce Vaughn. Now he was small.
Deuce Vaughn was 5'6".
I've just Googled it. Yes, he is the smallest active player in the NFL currently at 5'5". It says here.
Yeah,
1 meter 65. 6th round of the 2023 draft. Just suddenly had a memory of him playing in preseason and looking like he was a different species for the rest of the game. Deuce Vaughn. There we are. Smallest active player is 5'5". Just very quickly, were they a team? They were a team.
Yes, so the Staten Island Stapletons are a real team out of, obviously suburbs of New York. If you need to know what 119 pounds is, I worked out that our good friend, I've forgotten his name now, what's the Chargers running fullback?
Scott Matlock.
Scott Matlock is about 2.5 times the weight of Jack Shapiro. That shows the evolution of the position. I've got one more team for you, Phil. We're going to go for the New Jersey Generals.
Just simply because I think you've had 5 correct teams already, I'm going to say wrong. They weren't an NFL team.
then they are not an NFL team. They're another USFL team. And the reason why they are significant is because they were majority owned by Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was trying to leverage his way into the NFL so that he could own an NFL franchise. So he decided to buy the New Jersey USFL team and then sue the NFL until they allowed the merger to take place. And the NFL took them to the cleaners and the entire league folded because of President Trump. So, I don't think I'll get legally chased for that because I think that most of that is largely documented.
The HuddleUK does not endorse any political campaign.
But the New Jersey Generals are a very significant NFL team in so much as they never became one. And that would have obviously been a major turning point. But yeah, that was his strategy to get into the league. So they're not. So I think you did all right there.
Well, do you have score? I think I was 50-50.
I think you got 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay.
You nailed the non-teams, but you actually, I think...
struggled on the actual teams.
Yeah, I think Hamilton threw you through a loop. So I think you did pretty well there.
I'll take that, and given how good that was, I won't dilute it with what I had to go, and I'll save it for next week. I'll give you the very shortened version of the quiz, which is, can you name me? I'll see if you can just to finish off the episode, impress me, go 5 for 5, bang, bang, bang. If you can tell me the 5 NFL teams that can get ruled out of playoff contention this weekend. The 5 teams that are currently ruled out are the Raiders, the Titans, the Cardinals, the Saints, and the Giants.
So the Jets can be ruled out.
The Jets are 1.
Can the Dolphins be ruled out?
The Dolphins can't just.
No. Okay. Did you say, I'm forgetting that. Did you say the Browns?
The Browns are 1 of the 5.
The Browns are 1 of the 5. The Commanders?
The Commanders.
Did you say the Cardinals? I don't know why I didn't.
The Cardinals are already out of it. Yeah.
They're already, yeah. Vikings?
Vikings, correct. Yeah.
Oh God, Max, JJ. I'm so sorry.
I don't think you need to say about Max.
I'm completely blanking here. It is the Atlanta Falcons.
Is correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're a fan of the Falcons, the Commanders, the Vikings, the Browns, or the Jets, your team, if you lose this weekend, will be eliminated. The Vikings play the Commanders, so at least one of those will go on, but all of them, even if they win, have a fewer than 1% chance of making the playoffs. The Dolphins will be on the block the following week, as will the Bengals if they lose to the Bills this weekend. And then it'll be down to the final 10 teams in each conference after that. So we're getting to the nitty-gritty end of the season. Thank you very much for joining us on the HuddleUK podcast this week. A bit of a longer episode, but we owed you some more info after our bye week. So a bit of an extended one. Jake, thank you very much for joining. Just very quickly, because it's a game we didn't mention, but your team, the Bills, against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Quick score prediction for you?
I think the Bills by more than 7. Is that good?
Oh, no, I'll take Bills by more than 7, and I will regrettably say Eagles by fewer than 3. That's what I'm going to say for the Chargers game. So, and I hope I'm wrong. Thank you very much for joining. Remember to go check out the Huddle on all social media at Join the Huddle UK. Go read all the online content at www.huddleuk.com. We've continually got stories going up from all 32 of our writers. As I say, every week we have a dedicated fan writer for every team. So go check that out. I've been the host, Philip Marsh. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Huddle UK podcast, and we'll be back next Saturday.